Tonight, distracted driving, putting Canadians at risk. Deaths linked to driver inattention up 40%.
It's surprising because I've seen the number grow over the years.
Police target bad behaviours behind the wheel this long weekend.
Parliament is a mess.
Mounting pressure on the Prime Minister from his caucus to step down.
I think he's more likely to go to election and try his chances with the people than succumb to any of these pressures.
Discussions of a formal ask over the party's future. Inflation and high interest rates eroding Canadians' purchasing power. Also, a pledge to increase funding to fertility treatments grabs hold on provincial campaign trails.
When fertility benefits exist, we know that it attracts and retains young people.
Plus, a rare comet over Canada.
It's got a big, beautiful tail, and it's close enough to the Earth that we can see it really nicely.
What makes this space rock so special and how you can spot it.
CTV National News with Heather Butts.
Good evening. As Canadians hit the road this Thanksgiving weekend, police agencies are pleading with drivers to stay focused. The number of deaths from distracted driving is up 40% in Ontario compared to last year. There are fears it's only going to get worse. CTV's Kamal Karamali reports.
One crash after another. Dozens of deadly collisions on Ontario's highways this year. Now the province's police service says distracted driving is responsible for more deaths than any other cause, mostly from drivers using cell phones.
It's surprising because I've seen the number grow over the years.
This time last year, there were more than 280 fatal collisions on Ontario highways. 43 of those were from distracted driving. This year, of the nearly 300 deaths recorded, more than 60 of those were caused by drivers not paying attention to the road. That's a more than 40% increase year over year.
And now in almost every vehicle, you can access pretty much every app through a touchscreen, which is why police are puzzled that people still keep reaching for their phones.
You would think that we would leverage technology to make us less distracted on the roads.
But that's not the case. Across the country, nearly 1/4 of all fatal collisions are from distracted driving.
And the allure of that dopamine hit from responding to an immediate message or sending an immediate message is almost a routine that they're engaged in.
A routine that can have deadly consequences, with studies proving it could take seconds for your mind to adjust from your phone back to the road.
It slows down this kind of switch. So if something unexpected happens on the road, your reaction time is slower.
But for some drivers who've been busted,
I took a photo once at a stoplight and there was actually an undercover cop right next to me who pulled me over.
Or have had close calls, the message is sticking.
Like whatever you're doing, it can wait.
In hopes next year, distracted driving deaths will be driven down. Kamal Karamali, CTV News, Toronto.
A disturbing attack on a Jewish girls' school has left a community on edge. The facility in Toronto targeted by gunshots for the second time this year, and the bullets fired on Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the Jewish calendar. CTV's Siobhan Morris reports.
Windows smashed at a Jewish girls' school, bits of glass hanging on to frames after being pierced by bullets. It happened in the dark of early morning, the school empty and closed, no one physically hurt.
We understand this is deeply unsettling for the Jewish community, especially today on such a significant day.
The shots fired into Beis Hayamushka on Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the Jewish calendar. Police have nothing to share right now about suspects, but want the Jewish community to know safety is top of mind.
And you will see an enhanced police presence here as we work to determine what occurred.
It's the second time this school near Dufferin and Finch has been targeted this year. It was first hit by bullets in May, also while the school was closed.
While we can't say whether these incidents are connected at this time, it's certainly a key aspect of our investigation.
No arrests have been made in that first case. While police are not yet classifying this volley of bullets as a hate crime,
it is Yom Kippur, and a Jewish school has been shot up. So that is why the hate crime unit is a big part of this investigation.
The attack drew quick condemnation from leaders at all levels of government.
Whoever these culprits are that shot up the school need to be arrested and thrown in jail, because we have zero tolerance for any anti-Semitism, any form of hate with any religion.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau adding his voice on social media, saying he's disturbed by the incident, writing in part that his heart goes out to students, staff, and parents who must be terrified and hurting, and that anti-Semitism is a disgusting and dangerous form of hate, and we won't let it stand. Ontario's Solicitor General walked from synagogue to see the damage for himself.
It should not have happened today. It should not have happened immediately after October the 7th.
Calling on other levels of government to take a stand in fighting anti-Semitism.
The Jewish community is resilient because we believe in allyship. We believe that we have to stand together with all Ontarians.
Hopeful for a more harmonious year ahead. Siobhan Morris, CTV News, Toronto.
In Israel, Yom Kippur was marked by another day of demonstrations as families of hostages held by Hamas called for their release.
We are standing here every day and we don't miss a single day, even if it's Yom Kippur. The hostages are still there. There's no break for them.
Thousands gathered to demand the government secure the release of their loved ones. In the Gaza Strip, an Israeli military strike killed at least 29 Palestinians, according to local medics. Forces are pushing deeper into the Jabalia refugee camp, where international relief agencies say thousands are trapped. Israel has again ordered evacuations in the north and south. In Lebanon, the United Nations peacekeeping force said its headquarters had again been hit. One peacekeeper was struck by gunfire. Israel claims Hezbollah fired around 320 projectiles from Lebanon into Israel today. 2 men have now been charged with second-degree murder and arson in connection with a fire in Old Montreal last week that killed a mother and her young daughter. Montreal police suspect a 20-year-old man of using an incendiary device to set the building on fire, and an 18-year-old allegedly drove the getaway car. The pair are facing additional charges, including arson in a separate incident less than 2 hours before that fatal fire. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is facing mounting pressure from his caucus to step down from the leadership of the Liberal Party. A group of backbench MPs reportedly in discussions over a formal ask. Here's CTV's Colton Prale.
Back from a whirlwind trip to Laos, the Prime Minister is returning to a political firestorm. A group of backbench Liberal MPs are in discussions that could see dozens formally ask Justin Trudeau to decide on his future as Liberal leader.
Parliament is a mess. The NDP have left the deal, and so now the MPs, I think, are even more inclined to say, look, where is our plan?
Pressure has been mounting for months. By-election losses, the resignation of the Liberals' national campaign director, and an MP publicly calling for Trudeau to resign have fueled the fire. But this comes after what sources described to CTV News as a secret caucus gathering away from the main meeting earlier this week, while Trudeau was out of the country.
More of the same isn't going to work. So either you go or something changes.
Some Liberals are standing by him.
I'm disappointed because Canadians expect us to be focusing on Canadians and doing this work. And I know my colleagues. I know that that is top of mind.
Already this week, the Conservatives are targeting other high-profile Liberals like Melanie Joly.
She continues to pander to Hamas supporters in the Liberal Party as part of her leadership campaign rather than doing her job.
The NDP says this is another example of a government not putting Canadians first.
It seems like the Liberals are focused on their own drama. They're caught up in their own drama. We're focused on people.
For Trudeau and any rogue MPs, timing could be an issue. The House of Commons is on a week-long break, and MPs won't be back in Ottawa until October 21st, making it harder to address the entire party. Heather.
All right, Colton, thanks. Voters head to the polls in BC, Saskatchewan, and New Brunswick this month. In all 3 provinces, at least one party has pledged to increase funding for fertility treatments. CTV's Sarah Plowman looks at the promises and what's available right now across the country.
Danielle and Dustin Howe celebrate a decade together. For 8 years, they've tried to have a baby.
I'm trying to be patient, but
There's some days where it's, physically, mentally, emotionally exhausting.
The couple faces infertility. They've spent thousands on drugs, but it just led to dead ends and frustration. They're now turning to treatment, but it's costly.
We have had to remortgage our house twice, just kind of in general, hoping that costs will come down where we can afford, an IUI or IVF.
Dr. Marjorie Dixon says 1 in 6 Canadian couples experience infertility. An average in vitro fertilization cycle costs around $18,000.
And the reality is that most people will not necessarily get pregnant on their first cycle of IVF.
As provincial elections play out, there are pledges to provide more coverage. The Saskatchewan Party promises a tax credit of up to 50% or $10,000. Liberals in New Brunswick vow to cover 1 full cycle of IVF treatment, while Conservatives in BC pledge to pay for 2 cycles after the NDP set aside funding for 1 round of IVF last budget.
My hope is that policymakers are listening.
Across Canada, there's a patchwork approach. Currently, 7 provinces offer some coverage through tax credits or grants, but support varies. New Brunswick pays a maximum of up to $5,000 in a one-time grant. Ontario and Quebec fully fund a cycle of IVF, and in April, so will BC. Alberta and Saskatchewan currently offer no public funding.
When fertility benefits exist, whether you are an employer or you are a province, we know that it attracts and retains young people.
The proposals come as Canada's fertility rate dropped to an all-time low of 1.26 children per woman last year. The Hows will first try intrauterine insemination, which is less expensive, but if that doesn't work, they'll turn to in vitro fertilization, no matter who wins the election.
We're not waiting. We've been waiting 8 years. We have to move on and we have to make it work somehow.
It's not just governments advocates want to see up their funding, it's also employers. Only about half of Canada's businesses offer some fertility coverage. Heather.
Sarah, thanks. As Canadians celebrate Thanksgiving, some are paying it forward by volunteering at food banks.
We can't address all of their food needs, but we try to fill that gap of 2 or 3 days of food.
Food banks across Canada have been struggling to keep up with the surge in demand, attributed to a number of issues, including a lack of affordable housing and livable wages, as well as inflation. The cost of living has caused a lot of heartache for Canadians over the past few years. A new report this week takes a closer look at the numbers. And while many are struggling, some are still coming out ahead. CTV's Garrett Berry brings us that story.
Like so many others in this St. John's neighborhood,
Morning, Kenneth.
Tina Hand's trips to the grocery store are complicated.
Tomato soup. Used to be able to get them 2 for $1. I went to the grocery store and it was like almost $1.50 for a can of tomato soup.
She's on income support and says the money coming in hasn't changed enough to keep up with the money going out.
We buy cheaper foods. We buy, at Dominion and Sobeys and other places, they have these $10 bags of frozen foods. I can get 2 to 3 meals out of that for our family.
That pain doesn't appear universal. Some of the richest are doing pretty well, according to new numbers published this week by the Parliamentary Budget Office.
One could have been reasonable to expect that interest rates rising would affect virtually everybody, but it doesn't seem to have affected those at the higher end of the income distribution, at least not negatively.
80% of Canadians can afford less now than they could 2 years ago. The top 20% have maintained what's called their purchasing power. It appears high interest rates have given that slice of the Canadian population a boost through better returns on investments.
They benefited from higher interest rates through higher investment income, whereas it's not the case for those, obviously, at the lower end of the income distribution.
Because for many across the country, higher interest rates meant higher mortgage and credit card bills, a surging price tag for a proposed museum in Saskatchewan.
And we're disappointed because we thought we were close to our target of fundraising.
Or the unexpected costs behind a contract dispute, leaving school buses near Ottawa stalled for a whole month.
It has probably been one of the most grueling months of my life. It's been a huge time suck for us.
Inflation has touched just about every single part of Canadian life in the past 4 years. Millions of Canadians feel they must scrimp and save, some more than others. Garrett Berry, CTV News, St. John's.
Fuel shortages are gripping the state of Florida. People are facing lengthy waits for gasoline as they head home.
These are free for people. We're doing 10 gallons per customer. So you go, you get it, and you could be on your way.
Florida has opened 3 temporary fuel depots and are planning for more using the state's fuel stockpiles. Coming up, taking medication you don't need.
I never asked myself why, never asked myself, should I stop?
The prevalence of overprescribing medications in Canada. Medications are often prescribed to treat chronic conditions like pain, insomnia, and stress, but many are being overprescribed, especially to seniors, according to a study from McGill University. Here's CTV's Denise Roberts on the serious side effects.
Georges Marcoux was on his way up the corporate ladder when he was hit with unbearable stress and anxiety. He couldn't sleep, so he went to his doctor and was given a prescription for oxazepam, a benzodiazepine he took every day for 35 years.
It was a routine. So I never asked myself why, never asked myself, should I stop?
He says his doctors and pharmacists never asked him that question either. Then he learned more about the drug he was taking and its side effects.
I could fall, I could have problems in driving, and also because I had 5 brothers and sisters that died of Alzheimer's, and I was not going to go that route.
Dr. Emily McDonald says too many seniors are being prescribed potentially inappropriate medications.
When you're in the doctor's office, there are a lot of time pressures. So it is faster to write a prescription than to explain why we don't necessarily have a solution for the problem in front of us. Sometimes we don't have a good medication option, and so we pick the only option that we have.
McDonald and her team at McGill's Research Institute studied data between 2013 and 2021 and found 3 groups of medications in particular were being overprescribed. Gabapentinoids, an anti-seizure medication, proton pump inhibitors used for gastric reflux, and antipsychotics used to treat mood and sleep disorders. The study also revealed 42% of people over 65 are taking at least one potentially inappropriate medication.
The responsibility of the prescriber needs to be there to have a shared decision-making conversation with their patient.
In January, Quebec's College of Physicians announced it's monitoring doctors who may be overprescribing benzodiazepines, and other groups are urging people to learn more about the drugs they're taking. Marcoux says it took joining a sleep study to finally get off oxazepam.
I'm telling you, it's a gift. I got this gift.
And after a year of work, he can finally sleep on his own. Denise Roberts, CTV News.
Still ahead, just in time for the spooky season. Creepy crawlies sneaking inside your home. Fall can be a frightening time of year, especially if you don't like spiders. Beyond the popular Halloween decorations, you might be seeing more inside your home, and there's a reason for that. CTV's Christine Long has more.
She's a beauty.
McGill entomologist Chris Buttle plucks a fat crossback spider off his house in Hudson.
The reason they're large is because they're ready to lay their egg sacs, and then the female spiders will die once the colder weather and the frost comes.
And it may seem like they're everywhere.
They're getting ready for winter, and they're collecting bugs and what have you.
How big was the spider outside our door the other day?
Big, big, big. Buttle says it's not just the number, but the size. Mature orb spiders are big and very noticeable this season.
If you remember the story Charlotte's Web, she builds that beautiful web with the hub in the middle and the spirals around it. Those are the species that are quite large and we're seeing quite commonly this time of year.
This time of year, he says, many spiders want to move into your house where it's warmer.
The spiders are actually doing a lot of good in our house. They're eating other little critters that we don't want in our house, and having them up on the crown molding or down in the basement, they're really not harming much.
I just wish them outside. Yeah, no big deal.
I suck them up with a vacuum cleaner, unfortunately, and I say sorry while I'm doing it.
But sadly, I don't think I've seen many spiders yet.
I think they're good animals to have around.
And while the mama spider won't make it through the winter, her babies will.
And their egg sacs will live all over the winter, and then it all starts again. It's the circle of spider life.
Spider-Man. It doesn't last long. By month's end, the only spiders you'll see could be on the Halloween decorations. Christine Long, CTV News.
Decorations I can do. Hundreds of hot air balloons took to the sky today as part of New Mexico's 52nd Albuquerque International Balloon Fiesta. Viewers were captivated by a dazzling display of 106 colorful hot air balloons soaring through the sky. Held annually over 9 days, the Fiesta is the largest balloon event in the world. Another spectacular sight after the break. A rare comet set to brighten the night sky. It isn't often we get a chance to see a comet without high-tech help, but in a year already filled with so many astronomical treats, it looks like we will be able to add that to our list. Here's CTV's Alex Karpa.
A rare comet is set to brighten the Canadian night skies this month.
We first found out about this comet back in January of 2023, but it's been falling towards the sun for tens of thousands of years.
Comet Chuchinshan Atlas is hurtling towards Earth from the far depths of the solar system, and it will make its closest path on Saturday. It came from what's known as the Oort cloud, well beyond Pluto.
This comet has made its journey around the sun, and now it's headed back out towards deep space. But for a brief period of time, it's got a big, beautiful tail, and it's close enough to the Earth that we can see it really nicely.
Danielle Pahud says comets themselves are not out of the ordinary, but a comet that is bright enough to be seen by the naked eye is a rare occurrence.
Those only come around once a decade kind of thing, and so this one could be really special.
Those hoping to catch the comet should look to the west, about half an hour to an hour after sunset.
If you follow the tail of the Big Dipper and kind of arc down, you get to Arcturus, and then southwest, Venus will be really bright. So if you look sort of halfway between those two, the comet should be kind of halfway between those, and then it will slowly climb up in the sky.
In 2023, a green comet that last visited Earth 50,000 years ago whizzed by the planet. There have been other notable flybys, including Neowise in 2020 and 2 others in the 90s.
There's actually other comets that are being discovered all the time. There's one towards the end of October that might be a good view, might not. It's still uncertain. And there's annual things like meteor showers and things like that. The planets Jupiter and Saturn and Mars are all visible in the sky right now for Canadians. You can go out and see them in the sky with just your unaided eye if you know where to look.
2024 has been quite the year for astronomers. In addition to this comet, there was the total eclipse back in April, and the Northern Lights have been active over the last few days. Alex Karpa, CTV News, Winnipeg.
And that is our newscast for this Saturday evening. I'm Heather Butts. For all of us at CTV National News, thank you for watching. Good night, and I'll see you again tomorrow.